I'd like to just kind of I have a few questions of my own, right? And I like to just have a casual conversation with you. And then the cool thing is that we now have the function where people can chat here in the right hand corner for this space thread, and they can ask any question they want. We're always welcome to bring people up on stage too, but to get rid of the people who will shill and do all that kind of stuff, it's just nice to do that, right?
No, that's perfect. I didn't realize that was a function, actually. So
yeah, it's pretty new. We've been utilizing it quite a bit. It's been very, very healthy for us, and just, I don't know, inspiring good, constructive conversations.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's amazing. It works for me.
So, just kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Let us know who you are, what you are to the project, and kind of give us a quick overview of the project itself for those people who aren't aware.
Sure. So I'm Meow, or Dax, and I'm the sort of co-founder. I'm a co-founder of the project. There are essentially two of us. There's myself and Pine is more the design side. So in terms of project, as part of the team, my background's actually in e-commerce, crypto, and tech. So traditionally, I guess e-commerce is the field where I've kind of sharpened kind of my wits, and I've grown companies from 0 to 7 to 8 figures in revenue size. So I'm quite familiar with essentially growing a team, building out cool products, figuring out how to sell those, determining how to grow ARR or revenue. And afterwards, let's see, I've been trading crypto for about 7 years or so. And I got into NFTs around the time when CryptoKitties were out, actually. But of course, at the time, no one knew that they were really kind of the start of the NFT-ish phase. And what else is there? Pine and I both have been trading crypto for a while, and NFTs as well. And everything obviously started with the Bored Apes phase last year. So we feel that we've kind of built up our experience, and we wanted to create something for the Web3 community. And it started, our journey, I guess, started around I would say November last year. November, December was when we first conceptualized the idea of the dragons. And we've been building pretty much ever since. And Serpenta has grown into quite the behemoth in terms of what we would consider large, especially in the bear market. So we're very proud of what it's grown into and how the community has kind of come together and kind of rallied around the idea of the sort of derpy pixel dragons.
And one of my favorite things about this project specifically is the ownership of that. These are derpy dragons. This is even in for those of you who have not gone to their website and read the pitch deck, it literally calls it out in one of the bullet points. I've just never seen a pitch deck with the word derpy on it, and it was really
I think we wanted to come about this from a sense of fun. Obviously from a professional level, the pitch deck is quite useful for everyone. I know I really should have pinned that. There is actually a post where we have that. Let me see if I can find it actually, as we're here. So I'm going to be slightly distracted as I try and find this.
One of my favorite things about the project, at least from the outside looking in, is so I've seen other dragon projects and I don't even remember their names, so forgive me. But
that's okay.
They're too derivative of other projects, and as a Kaju King holder, I love that. But you guys aren't trying to do that, and even to go further, you guys are actually working with them, right?
Yeah. So, in terms of collaborations, mostly if you look at the people we've managed to work with. Okay, I can't find the link. In terms of the people we've managed to work with, and in terms of, I guess, the social proof that a lot of kind of investors or NFT buyers like to see, we're very, again, proud of the fact that we've managed to approach a lot of the larger projects to sort of go, hey, look at what we're building, look at the team, check us out. What do you think? And we've had a lot of like positive feedback to this extent where literally we don't get turned down. And we've had lots of very large kind of like other kind of influencers and projects come up to us and go, hey, we'd like to, we like your project, we like what you're doing, tell us more. And then obviously, can you offer us whitelists? So we feel that that's kind of additional proof on top of the fact that everyone can do their due diligence, right? If you guys are listening now and you don't have any familiarity with Serpenta as a project, you guys can go to our pitch deck website or link, which is pitch.serpenta.io/deck. So that's pitch.serpenta.io/deck. And that is actually available in different languages because we've also been approaching a lot of the Chinese community and the Japanese community. And Serpenta kind of came about actually because I live in Tokyo at the moment. And I guess everyone who is in NFTs knows how much of how much enthusiasm there is around anime and sort of Japanese culture, weirdly. Like even some of the pixel projects, like the earlier ones, they sort of allude to early kind of Japanese pixel games or like the indie games that everyone knows and loves now. And being in the same sort of like city or country where Godzilla and Toho Studios are a massive thing, like all of the Japanese JRPGs, like the old role-playing games are a gigantic thing. And then you go out in the streets, and I tell people this quite a lot, and like you see anime being used to advertise like insurance or banks or like random food. It's just really funny. And so I've kind of like compressed all of that, and then we've came up with the Serpenta Dragons. And because Japanese like adverts are quite funny sometimes, like some of them are kind of like quirky, weird, sort of hilarious to the, I guess, international community. We've kind of tried to go with some of that culture. So I'd say that the dragons are a combination of all of the things that I love, at least, about Tokyo and Japan and Japanese culture. And we've kind of tried to distill that out to sort of bring the entertainment and fun from a sort of professional and profile picture perspective. So, of course, there's a lot of other stuff besides that. Like we look on other projects like, Kaiju Kings, like, I guess, Moonbirds, like, I guess, what are the other ones? Like obviously you've got the earlier stage ones where, CryptoPunks are a thing as well, right? Like obviously because of their gigantic, price. But actually, in terms of the quality or the style of the art, we've made it quite significantly different, I would say. Remy, our artist, he's so good at doing this that every time he creates like a new version and we sort of all sit down and we sort of decide which one to actually put into the collection, we've let go of so many other cool pieces of art that I think the first collection is still overflowing, but we've got so many ideas kind of put aside where we couldn't actually like shove them into the collection the first time around. So on top of this, as I was saying, actually, the things that I like about the NFT space is that there's a lot of sharing, right? In terms of ideas, inspiration, kind of all of the fun aspects of it. So there are a lot of like, it feels like anyone that makes an NFT that's going to make a game style thing eventually tries to build Pokemon, which is kind of odd, but I think maybe this is just the natural progression of how, strong culturally and how, what's the word? Like how addictive the collecting process is and how much, like if you like one thing, then you'll like, how it upgrades, how it progresses, like how you can level it up. So we've got a couple of ideas in terms of, future kind of, what would you call them? Like slices of the onion that we're trying to build. So we try to see like, the genesis part as a core, and then we sort of layer on all the other kind of ideas that we want to do in terms of like creatively for the sort of hybrid / pets that we're going to do, and the sort of anime girlfriends, which sounds really weird, but we're going to make anime girlfriends for the kaijus because I really want to do something that's basically waifus for kaijus. And we sort of want to build that with sort of sense of fun that we have for everything else. So we're going to make this kind of like in the sort of Kaiju King sense, quite gameplay-ish, I suppose, but with the sort of the theme of the dragons trying to enter the void and then see what they find there, and then kind of explore this whole discovery aspect of the dragons sort of in their world. So I forgot to mention this at the start. And I blame this solely on the fact that I woke up way too sort of like early today. But the theme around the dragons and the kind of the ecosystem that we want to have on this sort of board of mine that I'm gesturing at with all of the post-it notes on, the dragons essentially live in their own world, and they're like the apex predators of the world. So then, kind of one day, the king and his counselors find that there's been this massive incursion of a void into their lands, and they wanted to find out, what it was. So they sent heroes in, and they kind of got like beaten up and they're kicked out. And then so they're like, what do we need? We send more people into this. Like we need to train them. So they shove a whole bunch of recruits into the void, and that's who that's who you're collecting essentially. And these recruits are woefully underpowered for like what's in there. So they come screaming out, but as they do, you find that they've got all these traits from all these places they visited. So sort of in line with this whole story, we're building everything else kind of like tied into that, because just having an NFT dragon collection is not really, to me, kind of storytelling, right? It's not really fun. You kind of want to be part of a journey, or you want to be part of something. So that's kind of how we've started the project in terms of like where we feel, what we feel is cool. And then we'll kind of expand it like along these lines so that at least there's consistency, and so that we understand, how the ecosystem is going to expand. So we know what like how to phrase it to people and how to tell the actual story in terms of like the animation styles, or the kind of the storyline, or like what you're collecting. All of these things are going to be all related, so that at least there is I guess coherency and consistency in this theme.
That was a lot that we just went through. No discredit to you. You did. I feel like it flowed really, really well. It's like, what am I even here for? Like, you talk every morning. We'll have like a space with you every morning. You can give us some updates. I love that. You said a lot there, so it's hard for me to pick out just one thing. So I'm going to go back to the very beginning.
Sure.
And say, hello, my name's Ryan. No, go back to the very beginning of something that you said, that the community has made this project really, really worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to me and everyone else how do you guys create a community around an NFT that's not launched yet? Now, I know there's going to be different answers for different projects out there, but I feel like it's one thing that is really glossed over a lot is like, hey, we've built this whole community off of something that's not even out yet, because I feel like that the way the meta has been going in this general space is that project mints, people wait a few days for the reveal happens, it dumps, it never recovers, and the community is arguing with the devs and things like that. So how have you guys done something a little different by kind of cultivating a community before all this?
Yeah, so I think that's actually a really good question. And actually, to answer this kind of more honestly, I'm going to have to take off my founder hat and then put on, like, I don't know, philosophical musings hat, actually. I'd say that a community before a project has minted and one afterwards are quite different. The kinds of people who will come in early for your project when you're smaller, let's say, we started actually obviously from zero, but when we first started and we got a community who sort of found us and they were like, oh my God, I really love your art. Like, I'm here to stay. I'm just like, whatever you guys do, I love these things, these features so much that I really want one. And me on the other side of this is like, yeah, I really actually want all of these as well. Like, this is why we created them, right? Like, they're so cool. I would actually try and buy all of them if I could. So when you first start, you can have like a one-to-one conversation pretty much with anyone that comes along. And I think this is true for any kind of like startup or company. The people who are early to the project kind of will adopt you for their own, right? And as you get large, it becomes like this point where you grow to, and I'm doing this in air quotes, but success. But the problem is that the later people who come along may come along for the hype, right? So and this isn't a bad thing, like all projects need a certain amount of hype and anticipation. So there is a due diligence that everyone really should go through where they're like, okay, I see that this project is hyped, but what is actually behind this, right? Who's behind this? What are they doing? And the person that likes the project, again, isn't necessarily one that will end up holding a dragon, or I say holding a dragon, but like everyone can hold like one of the dragons for a short period of time potentially, and we've got ideas to engage people who don't have dragons, right? So actually, I think I don't know if I mentioned this, but there's a mint status checker at the moment that we have, so you can check your sort of mint phase, whether you're whitelisted or waitlisted. This is a slight diversion, but on there, we're also giving out mystery boxes or assigning mystery boxes to people who perhaps won't actually manage to mint, but they've kind of shown some, what's the word, like community by actually coming along and even just clicking the button, right? Like people are very lazy on the internet, and sometimes there are so many things to click in Web3 that it's difficult to know, like what kind of contribution you're actually going to do, or like who's actually going to come. So to reward these guys, like at this phase, we're going to say, hey, okay, there's something mysterious in these mystery boxes. If you want one, we'll give you one, right? You don't have to hold a dragon at this point in time. So actually the style of people and the kind of like the community that we want to engage are people who are willing to look at us favorably. You don't have to be like a hardcore, dragon holder that yells the word Serpenta out at everyone that you meet. I suppose that'd be quite scary. But the earlier, I would say that the earlier fans tend to be the stronger ones. The later ones, you can still get people who are like, oh, this is fantastic, right? Like, and you need a USP, like a unique selling point, essentially, that differentiates you to some degree from all the other projects out there. And for us, when we tell people, oh, Pixel, then probably they have in their minds, probably like CryptoPunks, which is a distinct style and very sort of 8-bit kind of like super old style. But actually, Pixel doesn't tend to age that much. If you look at some of the sort of recent selling projects, you might like the quality of 3D generated, super modern looking PFPs or profile pictures, but actually they'll age as the technology improves, things change and styles change. But I think even for some reason, Pixel seems to stay the same, right? Like it's because you can simplify it to a concept. Like Pixel projects usually do something that's more interesting than just the art. So people will like it for, like how cool it looks. And then the fact that it doesn't age means that you can kind of whip it out at any point and go, hey, look at this. So we find that pre-mint, people who like the project may be different to post-mint, but as we're still learning in this space and we're still talking to everyone that we meet, at least from a project perspective, we learn a lot more about what it is that engages a community. And actually, it's really hard, right? It's in some cases, it's like Netflix. You're one of the shows that Netflix is, displaying to everyone. So are you, like as a show creator, do you want everyone to love your show and like just consume it forever? The answer to that would be yes. But does that actually always happen? And I think the answer to that is definitely no, like especially as more and more NFTs come into the market, right? As it becomes easier to come in, you'll definitely get your fans, but it'll be harder to compete for the overall, audience size. Even though I would say also that the audience size for NFTs is still growing, right? Like, so it depends on, when we say the word NFT now, like in the context of like you being a creator, I think what you're thinking about is like, do you like the art, right? Like there aren't that many products, I would say, besides, let's look at GameFi. I'd say, Steppen is one, maybe Genopets, Axie, all of these, obviously, Bored Apes, all of these behemoths have a lot of clout and they've got a lot of audience share, obviously. But does everyone need to be a Bored Ape? I don't think so. I mean, like when you go to Amazon, right, you'll buy a whole bunch of things, but you'll buy them, or let's not pick Amazon, that's a weird one. Let's say you like shoes and you might go and pick, like Nike, you might be a Nike fan, but equally, if you're into running, you'll pick, a certain type of running shoe. So like, actually, I'd say that it's okay to aim for a niche, and ours kind of like niche in a sense is, I suppose, the pixel art niche, right? It's like, okay, you like pixel art, or you like things that do, you like projects that do funding, the team creators. Like, do you, are you like any less than someone that likes Nike? Not really. And so we're happy to have fans that appreciate us for who we are. And we're trying to kind of like prolong the story and can continue it so that there's a sense of like anticipation, a sense of joy, a sense of fun around our project. And that's really who we're trying to engage from a sort of project perspective. I think we have enough USPs where if we're given enough time, or people, pause enough that where they're not scared about the market cycles, they can look on us and sort of go, oh, okay, I like this project. Like, I like what they're building. I like who they are. I'm going to commit, some funds here or some money here. And it's easier actually to get a 10x if you're looking at it from an NFT trader perspective. It's easier to get a 10x from a project that starts off at 0.08 and then goes to like 0.8 than it is to make a 10x from a project that goes from 1 ETH to 10 ETH, for example. Like, fewer people have 10 ETH than the number of people who have 0.8, right? So in a number of targets and sort of things that we're aiming to hit, I think, given, again, my background and the background of a lot of the members of the team, we sort of understand how the process works. And we know that, what it is that we're building doesn't necessarily have to hit everyone, but we hope that people who enjoy what we're doing will sort of slowly become a part of the community, right? So I would say that that's kind of my view on the community aspect. Like, I've got a lot more to say, but, we don't have all day.
Nope, that actually wraps up the whole. No, I'm just kidding. No, that was brilliant, man.
Everyone go home.
I have to, as a moderator for these kind of conversations, I have to find a fine line between tough, hardball questions, but also really good questions. So I want you to know that any question that I ask today, I'm not trying to be a dick, or I'm not trying to uncover some big conspiracy or anything that.
No, I find value in those because I think as a team, we're trying to actually navigate the waters as well. And we'll have the same sort of questions, right? Like, when we build, we're not sort of blind building into this. So, things like, what is it that you guys, and I've thought of this, like, as an NFT trader, like, I have to think about these things as well, right? So it's like, well, why are you guys different from everyone else, right? Like, what are you guys building in GameFi or whatever it is? And actually, it's interesting because I've talked to a lot of game studios and I've tried to find a number of game economists. And it's really interesting that GameFi is becoming a thing now because that's where, the money is and the investments, right? So it's really kind of strange to see that, Sony is building out its own GameFi team via a bunch of other people. I think Carthian is one, or Carthanen or something, is an Australian kind of game building behemoth that is also looking for game economists. So they're all kind of getting into this NFT / GameFi / I guess how to monetize the audience space. But the one thing that they're all trying to do that they haven't solved yet is how do you preserve a game economy once you've started it? And actually, if you speak to the experts, no one really knows yet. The only one that really works out in the open that's been created over time is EVE Online. And that's not like an NFT project. And it's funny because everyone who is in NFTs will tell you, oh my God, if they could only just put NFTs into that game, it would be gigantic. But it's interesting, again, to see this sort of split between people who just want to play the game, regardless of, where the money is, and then others who are like, if we just GameFi this, it'll be perfect. So it's actually quite funny to, again, with my project management hat and, founder hat on and off, it's really interesting to see the what people are trying to build and what people are marketing, right, to the general audience. And I think this is just a natural growth of the crypto space. Everyone's trying so many different things, but not all of them will succeed, and that's kind of okay. It feels very much like like evolution in some way. Stuff that will survive, or will get enough of a war chest to then survive into the future. Perhaps we'll do really well. There are some gigantic games that caught the mood of the bull cycle that have crazy amounts of cash in their war chest, and I'm hoping that they'll evolve the market in a direction where it's sustainable. But it's difficult to tell sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between making a game and then gamifying something, right? Like when I was in elementary school, and anyone in the U.S. might remember, they gamified reading, right, with accelerated reader, and you would get points, and you would be able to cash that kind of stuff. That's gamifying something. It's getting people to do something that they normally wouldn't do to give them incentive. So with NFTs, I think a lot of people gamifying it is like, hey, if we gamify it and we give them some kind of incentive, they'll hold it, right? Which is really different than gamifying an NFT project and making a game, because at the core of a video game, especially popular video games, is that they're fun, right? A gamified NFT project isn't always fun, and I think we've seen a vast experience of that kind of stuff. I agree. I love your thoughts on that, though.
Yeah. Sorry. Weirdly, I'm actually in a chat with a bunch of luminaries about GameFi later on. So I would say this is true. I think the word gamification hasn't been used enough in the NFT space, maybe because it sounds very mechanical, but the terminology, I would say, is correct, where you're looking to build something that is fun, but also that people will engage from a financial perspective, right? Because that's kind of the whole point about crypto. It's literally digitizing money in a form that humans will use. Maybe later on we won't know that we're actually using crypto. It will just be like, oh, hey, everything is now digitized, including money and information. So this is how it naturally combines. And look at all the cool things you can do with cryptocurrency and then NFTs and then everything else. I guess there isn't actually very much for me to add. Like, I think that's totally accurate. Like, games that try to only monetize you and they just tack on randomly, costs are not a fun thing to play. And I think the audience is smart enough to realize that this isn't what they want to do. They're also trying to find something that's fun. And I would say that fun is different for everyone, right? One person's idea of fun is probably Excel, and someone else's idea of fun is probably just, straight Counter-Strike or, Call of Duty or something else. And I think from the size of the gaming industry, clearly people have different tastes. So perhaps, later on, we'll have all of these different strata of game types that people like playing, and they'll just be, I guess, gamified in some way, shape, or form, or gamified in some way, shape, or form. I think we're still discovering what that actually means. Because actually, if you think about it, right, games what do you call them, like mobile games, and especially free-to-play games, they have a gigantic audience, because who doesn't like free-to-play? But of course, it's getting very saturated. But if you go to these companies and you're like, hey, your free-to-play game is making billions, would you like to NFT any part of this? I don't know if they'd sort of instantly go, oh, yes, that's a great idea. We could instantly, grow our revenue by 10% and not lose 10% of the audience, right, or more. So I think it works already in the sense that people have figured out how to gamify stuff. It's just that the equivalent kind of NFT crypto version hasn't kind of matured or appeared yet, because the crypto and NFT audience size is actually really small compared to everyone that holds a phone. So I think perhaps some of this is adoption, where as we progress through time, more people will perhaps understand, what crypto is, right? That it's not a scam, or that at least there are serious people in this who don't want to scam you. So I think all of this adoption and all of this regulation that we hear about is part of that sort of growth. People forget that Bitcoin itself actually isn't that old, and then everything else that comes on top of that takes time to kind of mature and sort of percolate through the system, right? I still have friends who love Bitcoin but hate everything else, which is kind of odd to see. But there are people who love Ethereum and then hate Cardano, people who love NFTs and hate everything else. As you sort of release a new technology to the world, it takes time before people see it. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I trust this then. Here, take my money. Because when you, as a normal person, when you read about NFTs and you're like, oh, God, I could just right-click save this. Why are people paying, $100,000 for a picture of an ape? This is quite difficult for people to get over. Even people who are in the space already, but in a different sort of like niche.
For sure. And as everyone constantly reminds everyone in the space, we are early. and I think that's definitely the case when it comes to the gamification of projects. So
agreed.
Love that.
Agreed.
But and I really appreciate that in-depth discussion on that. I think it's a very important thing, and I'm always curious on what project leaders' opinions are on not just their project, but just projects in general. So I really appreciate that. But I mean, I do want to talk about Serpenta a little bit. So
that's what I'm here for.
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say we just changed the topic to general state of the NFT market. No, but so let's get back on track a little bit when it comes to the project and its utility. So that's like one of the biggest touted things projects is what's the utility? What's the utility? We've seen the opposite where it's the meta of no utility, just pictures, just vibes, blah 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 blah. What is the utility that this project is hoping to provide to the people out there? The other day I was on a project, hosting a project space where the NFT PFP collection gave you access to a job board, for God's sake. So what's the utility that you guys are hoping to provide? We're curious on that.
Yeah, so there are different aspects of utility, and again, utility means different things to different people, I would say. From a project perspective, what we're aiming for is to obviously provide enjoyment and entertainment to people, much like how I suppose you buy a movie ticket and then you get 3 hours of entertainment of it, and you're quite happy, or you buy a game, right, and you get 40 hours of fun or 20 hours of fun out of that, and then you enjoy that. There are so many things that you can build from an NFT perspective, where you are kind of like you stand on the shoulders of giants, they say, right? Where you look at what other people have done and you're like, oh, okay, this is really good for this meta, or this is really good for this meta. I'd say that from our sort of experience, our aim is to really grow the value of the ecosystem in terms of like trying to figure out how to bring in revenue for the project as a whole, whether it's kind of from the fact that the gamified aspects of what we're going to be releasing will be so fun that people want to collect more dragons. And then as a team, because we're so, I guess you get better at building projects each time you kind of encounter them. So a lot of the usefulness that we can provide in terms of founders is kind of finding tools to make everyone else's life more easier, right? Perhaps onboarding more Web3 people, perhaps making it easier for, we've got amazing collab giants in the space as well, and we've got a lot of interesting connections that we have. So it's really from a sort of discovery perspective, we can say, okay, well, actually, it seems like there's a problem here. I think we can solve this problem 10x, right? And then can we find commercially a way to actually get money by growing the audience size as well, that's not restricted only to the people who hold the first Genesis dragons. I think, for example, Kaiju Kings, if you sort of go to them, and they're a luminary and a North Star in the space, if you go to them and go, well, what is your actual utility? That's a weird question when you consider it in that sense, because the team is so good at building something that's quite innovative and sort of different, but it's also the whole kind of, do you like Pokemon question mark, right? In some ways, it's kind of like trying to figure out different angles to generate this sort of sense of joy and fun and interest in your community and holders, where they're willing to tell other people about it. So I know this seems a bit vague, but it kind of in terms of the collections that we're looking to kind of release afterwards, we don't want to dilute the price of the sort of the Genesis, or dilute the price of the existing dragons already. But in terms of what we can do, there are lots of cool ideas that we'd like to test. But obviously, from my sort of thought point, we kind of need to understand whether we have a product market fit or not. So to borrow colloquialism from the startup space, I think we'll be trying a lot of ideas to see who likes what, and because the meta changes so fast, is it a good idea, for example, to release an NFT project right now in this part of the bear? Probably not. So then, if you had that on your roadmap, I don't know if that's you'd have to pivot that slightly, right? There are tools that I can see that should help the space, and we'll definitely be building into them. But because we're not past mint yet, it's difficult to know exactly, how much of a war chest we'll have, or obviously developers cost a lot of money, so we'd have to, continue to pay hours, as well as our artists, as well as other parts of the team. So it's difficult to actually pin that down, but I can say that we do have definitely a couple of ideas beyond just the sort of the gamification of the dragon space that we have. So the staking will be that you can train your dragon as the staking kind of name. And as they level up, you'll find that you have access to more and more of the kind of the world and the environment, whether it's like physical access to other things, kind of like access to other projects, or whether it's essentially that you get more access to the sort of latest stories that we have, or even the types of missions that you have, the sort of exploratory aspect of the lands that we have. All of this isn't from a sort of buy the land, build something on top of it perspective, but it's hopefully one that sort of aligns itself very tightly to the theme of the dragons being like in this space where there's there's an army coming through, or like there's a skeletal kind of archmage coming through. Like, what do you do next is kind of like part of the story.
Sorry, I was typing a very clever pun in our Twitter thread. You gave me the idea. You mentioned staking to train the dragon, and I tweeted DAO to train dragon, as in
so train the dragon. Yeah, so this is quite interesting, right? Like, actually, there's a lot of stuff. So we were looking at we've looked at the tokenomics for a lot of other projects. And we actually found some interesting things about, obviously, Potatoes, which is another, super gigantic pixel project, tied to Memeland, and obviously Moonbirds. And so, all of these guys are innovating in this space. But actually, when you go to them and you go, okay, what is your actual utility here? Like, it's a potato. You put it in the ground. It gets, like raffle tickets. Like, do you want the raffle tickets? Well, clearly the answer is yes. But like all these things are about sort of anticipation and storytelling, right? Like, obviously, you just can't reveal nothing at the end. You have to give them, you have to give the fans something. And essentially, like, that's what some of the projects start out as, right? Like, you have to figure out whether you can give the fans something, and then you build in utility afterwards. If you just randomly build utility and you're like, this is definitely what you want, but you haven't found the fit yet, this is the problem with a lot of startups, where they're like, I think people need this, but there's no kind of like reassurance from the audience, from the crowd that you're expecting to pay money for, right? For the thing that you're building. So actually, sometimes when you build something, the idea is to release it, test it, get the feedback, release it, test it, get the feedback, right? So you improve it with each cycle. And it's difficult to know exactly what you end up building because the audience half doesn't know what they want. But the other side of things is that you might discover, if your team is smart enough, you'll discover something that you didn't think you were going to actually release in the first place. It's much like how, I remember the story of how Discord was something else originally, right? Like Slack probably started out as something else originally. And it wasn't until they sort of gave it to the community and they played around with it that they actually realized that they should have been building something else. So I think, again, the reason why investors kind of invest in startup teams and not necessarily in the ideas that they want to build is that they know that they can pivot like in an agile fashion, and they have the sort of knowledge and the ability to kind of create whatever it is they set their minds to, and that they're capable of handling the meta, whatever that is. So I think like we can clearly tell you, what Serpenta is going to look like from a sort of thematic perspective, and what there is inside of it. And we're going to be building stuff that's like actually really interesting. But as to exactly what that looks like from this side of the fence, I don't even know, right? Like, I think we're doing a lot of like learning in the space, like everyone is. And even if you look at some of the larger brands, like all they have is a brand and they're like, yeah, so we're definitely building something. But if they haven't solved this problem yet, but they have solved the sort of the brand cohesiveness, then that's something for us to obviously aim for. So on top of building the brand and building the team out, and then, storytelling in a sort of very attractive fashion, and then building out this collectability and sort of entertainment into the Serpenta project, I'd say everyone kind of has to wait a little bit to see what else there is. But obviously, you guys need some like trust, and hopefully you can get that from this kind of like the discussions that I'm having with the community, whether it's, online only, or whether it's via voice, or whether it's via, chat and all the crazy memes that everyone keeps sending me. Like all of these things are, I think, a testament to the fact that we've got a lot of people who are interested in what we're building, and like they like the uniqueness of it.
Very nice, and I agree with you. I think that always the trust there, helps solidify that with the community. However, we do have someone who just asked a question on the kind of the opposite end there. They feel like the info you've been given might be a little vague, so they were curious if you could, if I will ask if you could be a little bit more clear about what the game mechanics are.
Sure. So around the
what is it about? They phrase it as what is the game about? But I assume that's probably a lot of the information.
Yeah,
you guys don't want to reveal. But yeah.
Well, so the game itself, in terms of like what the mechanics will be, we wanted to build something that was tied to a rogue-like auto battler, because I feel that a lot of the people who are in the space may or may not want to play games as we sort of define them, right? So actually, like tied into my vagueness is really that we're considering a lot of options, and it's all kind of we've put down a lot of the structure of the things that we actually want in a game, but we're not sure actually like how what's the word, like how much depth to put into it, because if you only want to play a game, there are lots of those on Steam, right? Like you can just go to Steam and like play around, like, buy or download a random game. The people who are interested in NFTs don't actually want you to become a game, like weird as that sounds. They're expecting something gigantic out of it. So it's difficult to distill, I would say, the ideas that we have down to a series of projects that we can build that then kind of like with each layer make kind of build up the ecosystem, right? I keep using this word, but actually like that's how you add value to a project, I would say. Like you add more and more that the community wants, but like they don't actually want you to be a game company, or at least I don't think so. People who are like, oh, we're going to build the next metaverse. It normally takes like 2 to 3 years to build a standard game. And the NFT community can barely handle, 2 months of the market going down. So I'm pretty sure that they're probably not going to hang around for the 3 years it takes you to actually build a game. So this is the difficulty, right? The community says they want something, but they don't actually want that. I don't know if they realize this in terms of, like how they say things, but they clearly react with the way they vote with their feet, with, like owning the NFT or just selling it after, someone goes, oh, by the way, this will take, 2 years to build a game. This sort of relates to the anime space that I've been hearing a lot about as well, where people don't, realize it takes like about a week to 2 weeks to make 30 seconds of like animation. So I'd say mechanics of the game will be kind of relevant to the NFT space in terms of the sort of the tokenomics that we're trying to perfect, and the sort of the rarity levels and the trait styles of the dragons themselves. Everything will be related to similar to the NFT space, right? Like you collect them because you like how rare they are. You want them because of like what the utility and the sort of the traits do. But it's how we sort of like turn that from oh, look at what they are into oh, look at what this does. And to be honest, like we haven't, fully solved that, but we're looking to reward community members who have dragons at different rarity levels, so that they'll fully experience the sort of the pets that we're releasing, or the sort of waifus that we're going to be releasing, in terms of like the harem collection, for example. Because we like this idea of the waifus, like being attracted to dragons, we've considered playing around with the soulbound tokens, so that you can soulbind your anime waifus to your dragons, so that if you wanted to sell your dragon at a later date, for example, like you probably wouldn't if you've managed to collect like 50 of these, anime waifus that are tied to your dragon, right? Like when you sell your dragon, you lose all your waifus, for example. So I think some of these things are kind of like ideas at the cusp of technology currently. Like no one fully knows what the full effect of soul binding like one token to another is, in terms of like the psychology of the buyer. But actually, it sounds like a really cool idea we could work into the system that makes sense. Again, thematically with how dragons are, or like how we want to describe like what the waifus do. I don't know if that's enough of an answer, but I'm hoping that it's enough for now until we actually start the actual building and we sort of recognize or realize what it is that does work and what it is that doesn't work with all of the tools at our disposal.
No, for sure. I think it's definitely important for people to understand, like, hey, this is a roadmap. This project isn't necessarily about the game. This game is something that we hope to build into this process as the roadmap goes on. Would that fair to?
Yeah, it's kind of one of the final stages of the kind of the roadmap, right? So, like as you build out more and more of the kind of milestones that we're looking to hit, we'll learn actually ourselves more and more about like how we can sort of gamify this whole thing and like exactly what it is at the end when the community is like, okay, we've been holding for this amount of time, we're totally happy to get this, right? Like again, like if you're a startup and you're like, okay, I'm aiming for this, you don't actually know what it looks like at the end. You just know that you'll be building all the way up to it. And I think some of the sort of misnomer about a roadmap is that it pinpoints exactly what you're going to be doing down the line. There's so much you can do, and there's so much change that, I bet a year ago, no one knew that anime projects would be so gigantic, right? Like no one knew, a year ago that NFTs weren't necessarily going to be a super, super big thing because everyone's still discovering. So I think in line with this, we're part discovering, but like our core fundamentals still remain the same. Like everything about the project is still kind of like super cool. It's super fun. The artwork's amazing. Like the releases are coming. The staking is built in. The prizes in terms of, what you'll get if you stake your dragon or train your dragon, are kind of there. It's just that I can't release everything about what we're planning on doing because we haven't built it yet. And that, right. So that's the best I can do, unfortunately, with that answer.
I think your best is fantastic. Don't worry. Don't worry about that.
Thanks.
So one thing you mentioned, I don't know if this was like a hint at things that you guys have projected or not, but you mentioned you very specifically said the word Genesis dragon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is the idea that there will be like other collections, a baby element to this?
Yeah, again, I think this sort of harkens back to when I said everyone's trying to build Pokemon. It's really weird, but actually, I think that's what people really like, right? There's this roguelite what's the word, meta in games right now, where a lot of indie devs are trying to build like randomness and sort of serendipity into their games, right? And I think this is like almost perfect for NFTs, where you mint your NFT or you choose it afterwards on the on OpenSea or something else because you like the look of it, because you like the sort of the luck of what randomness has managed to give you. And I think tied into this, it just feels like a very kind of good way to continue, I would say. I think I just lost my train of thought there. I was talking.
Brother, that happens so to me literally every day of my life. We're all
clearly I started this talk way too early, for me at least.
Well, and it's getting late into the talk too. We're just almost around the hour mark here. So
oh wow, okay.
We haven't got a ton of questions in the chat, but that's fine. One of my favorite parts about this is we have so many people that go back and listen to the recordings here. Very excited to see what kind of questions come from that. But I always like to ask projects at the end here, if there's one thing you want people to walk away with, maybe it's something we didn't necessarily hark on or talk about, but there's one thing that you want them to be like, hey, this is what our project is. This is what our project's about. What would that be? What would be the thing that you'd want kind of the takeaway here to be?
I think it's actually that it's what I said at the start again, which is that we feel that the quality and the sort of unique point about the dragons is like primarily people say don't judge a book by its cover, because everyone judges books by how they look. You look at how visually things appeal to you, right? So if you like the look of the dragons, and we hope you do, we've put in a lot of work into perfecting them. And we feel that they're actually unique, like in terms of the style of them. There are a couple of, I would say, of good pixel projects, but we hope that the dragons themselves, in terms of how they convey our love of I guess the sort of sort of Japanese culture, pixel culture, the where it harkens back to the sort of indie style of game development in terms of the pixel look. Like, I hope that people enjoy that, and that they enjoy collecting them to the point where as we tell and unveil kind of the story elements of like how we've kind of slotted them into the world, that this will give people enough like joy, right? Like, that's ultimately what you want when you actually you pay for something. You want it to give you the equivalency in fun, at least, or more so that it brings a smile to your life, right, or to your face. So I think, like, if it was a single thing, I'd say that I hope that initially you super like what it is that you mint, and then afterwards you enjoy the kind of journey that will sort of drag you along, and then the sort of hilarity of everything as we reach the weird anime waifus.
I'm so excited for your all's project, but most importantly these waifus that you've mentioned. That concept is so hilarious.
I think I really like the idea that, like, if we can figure out a way to soulbind them, all right, like it won't just be that you'll have them, but actually in the sort of like the visual display, if we can handle it so that they'll just like follow you around as you're moving your dragon around, or like as you go from like stage to stage, or whatever, or like how they help in terms of whether when you train your dragon, like how this will kind of visually represent itself. Like, there are all these kind of cool things where you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if? And I think I like the sort of fireside chat moving into development. But sometimes you don't know, right? There is so much new stuff happening in this space where it's like, oh, well, like Cellbound stuff is new, like super new. And then I'd say, like, as time goes on, we'll discover even more things that are new. So as we sort of learn those, we'll be like, oh, wow, wouldn't it be cool if? And then, we'll shove them in this sort of gamified nature of the collectability and sort of like the fun around the dragons. So all of these kinds of things are very exciting to me, because I really want to see like what sort of like stupid stuff we can do to kind of keep everyone like entertained, amused. And then so like one of the parts of I guess experiencing things is that you get to tell your friends, right? Like, so I know, us in being in the NFT space, we can't always tell like our IRL friends about the latest dumb thing that we bought online. But actually, it would be cool if kind of some of this would convey to, like even amongst your friends, you could be like, hey, look at this project, look at what they're doing, it's so dumb. And then actually the state of the NFT space is that actually has value, like being able to say something new about it, right? You don't want to say, oh, look at this project, it's just an exact clone of the other one, but the art is slightly better. Or look at this project, it looks like the other one, and then that's it, right? There's a lot of cool stuff that I wish people could do, and I think the space is so immature now in terms of like the team that they don't necessarily have the knowledge or the technical experience, right? Because it's actually really hard to find really good blockchain developers. It's actually really hard to find developers who can build in the space, who also like NFTs right now, because actually also developers and artists both think that the NFT space is a scam. So weirdly, it's difficult to find a really good team. And now that we've built the team, there's lots of like cool stuff that we want to try out and sort of share with the community.
Right on. Well, I really appreciate that. I appreciate this whole conversation. And again, excited to see what your all's project comes about. It is minting here soon, right? In a few days.
Yeah, it's minting on the 16th at 11 a.m. EST for whitelist people. You can actually go, and I think our checker page is live, where if you go to serpenta.io/profile, you can check to see, there's a short survey about, how many you want to mint and do you want an email pre-mint reminder. But there's also like a mint status checker where you can learn what mint state you have. And we also assign like a mystery box to you. So it's worth going to serpenta.io/profile. If you've got whitelist, it might take about 12 hours for us to sort of update the database, because we're doing daily kind of updates on that as we get more and more people who are interested in us. So we're sort of managing that whole process. But yeah, minting soon. Hope you guys can make it. Check out our Discord, and obviously, follow our Twitter if you haven't already, or if you aren't already.
Excellent. Well, again, I really appreciate your time tonight, this morning for you, and everyone who's out there listening, and everyone who's out there listening to the recording. We love these kinds of conversations with projects, but we look forward to seeing how everything plays out. And good luck to you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Good night.